Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment based on, again, previous experience in terms of dealing with Section 8s. It's the saturation point on Section 8s that begin to change neighborhoods. It's the concentration of Section 8s. And I think that that's one of the challenges because, as I pointed out to the earlier panel, there are few issues that are more complex in urban economics than housing. And the experiments we had in the 50s and the 60s where many of our veterans coming back, it worked quite well. And then as the housing grew much older and there was less money to keep it up to date, in old cities, landlords began to walk away from properties. And one of the phenomena that came of those years was abandonment. And those of us who had to deal with that abandonment issue, it was very significant because it was great difficulty in tracking the landlord. And I think having the private sector involved and helping to discipline those aspects of the marketplace is terribly important. Mr. Moss, I was surprised that you mentioned the shortage of affordable housing. And it's always important, I think, to use the term affordable housing. Yes. And because the connotation of low-income housing, again, is that you're going back to high-rise developments and that you're going back to a concentration of Section 8s. But you've mentioned that there's a shortage of affordable housing in your testimony. Would you speak to that issue?
Yeah. The Harvard study that was most recently published, the report showed that only 4 eligible low-income households out of 10 were finding an apartment that achieved affordability for them. 4 out of 10. So there's 6 households out of 10 that cannot find an apartment where their rental costs are 30% of their monthly income or less. They're paying 50%, 60% of their monthly income in rent. And so the rent burden is tremendous in this country. The Harvard report demonstrates that, sir, and also the recent Bipartisan Policy Housing Center report.
One of the confusing things.
Would you turn on the?
Excuse me.
Yeah, okay.
On affordability, we need to define it. So some people say affordability with 80% of the median income. And if you do 80% of the median income, like the apartment industry, 90% of the people in housing are affordable. The low income, where you can only afford to pay 50 or 60% or 40% of the median income, is where the real problem is. So it's the low income which needs to be subsidized and needs to have the credits and needs to have the Section 8s. If that gap that's currently there is going to be, we're going to close that gap.
But I also think it's fair to say that management's a key issue.
Yes.
On how those units are managed.
Yes.
Because you get some first-class management teams, nobody would even know it was affordable housing or subsidized housing. And then if you get a bad management team that simply accepts the subsidy and walks away from the property, when things start to go south for them on their other investments, and that's frequently what happens, they stop any sort of upkeep to the property, and I think we need to be mindful of that. But how would you strengthen the low-income credit? Because I've been a supporter of new markets, low-income housing credit, and I think it works. How would you propose the panelists strengthening the option?
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say your bill with Mr. Teaberry that fixes the 9% credit.
I was hoping you'd say that. Yeah.
Fixes the 9% rate, fixes the 4%.
I don't see a prompt here, do I?
Without that, the credit rate on the tax credit falls, and it results in 18% less equity in the deal. And so fixing that rate ensures that a sufficient amount of equity is available, because this is a production program. And we heard in the earlier panel, economists like vouchers, in theory, but vouchers don't help build the property. They help allocate the demand after the fact. But this program is really useful in the sense that it provides safe, affordable housing on the production side.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.